Poffenberg? Absent. Wyrock?
Here.
Kardatsky?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Has everyone read the minutes from the last meeting, and if so, are there any additions or deletions? Go right ahead.
I have some comments I've communicated to staff already. Page 3, we have in the first paragraph, last full line, the study found that the proposed development does not negatively impact the level of traffic of the surrounding streets as opposed to surface. I think that's the right word. And then on page 8, first full paragraph, talking about the visits to the site. They have a line that begins, sometimes they know about it ahead of time, and sometimes they do that. But the first line says they could have visitors come out for the licensing. It says restrictions, but I believe it means inspections.
Yeah.
Those are the only comments I have.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, duly noted. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I would like to have them approved as noted.
Approved with the corrections.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
All right. During this meeting, if anyone's going to give testimony, I need you to raise your right hand so I can swear you in. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Say I do, and thank you. All right, we're now on case 247, text amendment to reduce the minimum required lot area per unit for planned development in the multifamily districts and amendment to the zoning map and special use for a planned development, final plan development, and site plan approval for 50 condominium units for Grange condominiums, DTLG Investments LLC. Can I get a motion from one of the commissioners to open the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. All approved? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I believe staff has something to say before the petitioner.
Thank you. Just very briefly, we have a little summary for you of the application. As Chairman Kardatsky stated, the application is for a 5-story, 50-unit condominium building with requests to include rezoning the property from C1 to R8, a text amendment related to minimum lot area per unit for planned developments in R8 districts, a special use permit for planned development, site plan approval. The Planning Commission previously conducted public hearings on this application on January 8th and February 12th, and the applicant presented their application materials to the Village Board last night on April 8th. The Village Board has referred this item back to the Planning Commission because several changes have been made to the plan since the February public hearing, and the Village Board has referred this item back to the Planning Commission in order to get this body's input on the current proposal. So I'm going to briefly highlight some of the changes since the last time you saw this application. Since the Planning Commission has fully considered the application at 2 prior public hearings, I won't go over all aspects of the development again, but we'll just hit those highlights of changes since last time. The changes really fall into 3 categories: the placement of the building, other related changes along the south property line, and the building materials. So this is an overview site plan of the plan that was presented in February and the current site plan that you have in your packet tonight. Related to the south property line, in February, the garage level, which is primarily undergrade near the 6th Avenue side of the site, the west side of the site, was proposed to be located at the south property line. The upper stories here were proposed to be approximately 10 feet back from the property line in this area. The red dotted line indicates the outline of the garage level. Currently, the plans have been revised and the garage level has been reduced in size. No parking spaces were eliminated. There were storage areas that were eliminated to reduce the garage level. This red dotted line outlines the perimeter of the garage level as it currently stands. It's approximately 6.5 feet from the south property line. The upper floors remain approximately 10 feet from the property line. Related to these garage level changes, previously the applicant had proposed terrace walls that were approximately 5 feet high on the property line. Those were sitting atop the garage level situated at the property line. The revised plans, as you can see, have eliminated those terrace walls. Instead, there are planter walls that are approximately 3.5 feet tall, situated about 6.5 feet from the south property line. Other elements of the south elevation of the building have also been changed. The stairwell was previously located at the south property line. There were balconies on floors 3 through 5 that were located approximately 4 feet from the property line, and they were directly across from 11 6th Avenue. Further, there were balconies as you moved on east on the building. Now, the southwest stairwell has been moved to be recessed into the building. The location of the balconies have also been modified. The balconies that are immediately across from 11 6th Avenue have been recessed into the building. And the far eastern balconies shown on this plan here are now beyond the east wall of 11 6th Avenue. These balconies do extend from the south plane of the elevation of the building and are situated approximately 4 feet from the property line. On the east side of the property towards 7th Avenue, the building, including the garage level, has always maintained a 6-foot setback from the property line. This setback has not changed, but the stairwell has. Previously, it was located at the property line. It has also been recessed into the building. Finally, the applicant has made changes to building materials. In the January Plan Commission report, the Design Review Commission had recommended that the applicant incorporate features that were present on the Burlington Avenue elevation of the building on other elevations of the building. Here are a couple examples of those changes that have been made. As you can see, this is what on the left the building looked like from 6th Avenue in February, and then on the right is the current proposal. Additional brick has been added to the elevation as well as the cornice piece here on top. Similarly, on 7th Avenue, there have been additions of brick on the southeast corner. And the applicant, I'm sure, has a more detailed presentation of the changes to the building materials and as well as in your packet. So in summary, through plan development, the village is able to provide flexibility in zoning regulations to achieve a more desirable environment than would be possible through strict application of the zoning code. The village is also able to place conditions on plan developments to promote compatibility with surrounding properties and mitigate any adverse impacts of the development. In referring the plan development application back to the Plan Commission, the Village Board welcomes the Commission's comments on the proposed development, including the recent plan changes and whether such changes have addressed potential adverse impacts.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
So I just want to be clear, the garage is all sort of below grade where it butts up against, where it's next to the condo building to the south. Is that right?
So the architect can speak more specifically to this. Based on the information that we have, it appears that at the 6th Avenue western edge of the property, it may extend approximately 18 inches above grade, which is where the planter walls are. But they are no longer at the property line. It's now approximately 6.5 feet back from the property line.
Can you explain how the underground parking relates to the FAR and the lot area coverage and how that affects the need for the text amendment?
Sure. So neither FAR nor lot area coverage or building coverage are related to the proposed text amendment. The lot area, the lot coverage is not impacted necessarily by the garage below grade portion. The lot coverage is the portion of the lot that's being covered. The building coverage takes into account all portions of a building above, at, or below grade. So any portion of the building, the largest level of the building is what's considered for the building coverage. So we're using the garage level for that calculation for the zoning code. You do have in front of you a table that outlines some of the distinctions between the garage level and the upper floors, which on this illustration here you see what appears to be the ground level is actually level 2 of the building. The proposed text amendment, FAR is a standard that we use for bulk in our commercial districts. It's not something that's present in the R8 district, but we do compare for you FAR and have compared it in the past because other mixed-use developments that are zone C1 are subject to those FAR guidelines. And it's a good rule of thumb for understanding bulk of a building on a site. The text amendment, the proposed text amendment, is to reduce the minimum lot area per unit that is allowable in a planned development in the R8 district. So that is a measure of density, not of bulk. So it's related to how many units are in the building and how many units are in the building on a lot of a certain size. So theoretically, a development could meet building coverage, but have a higher density than what would normally be allowed. They are related to one another, but they are not one and the same in as much as the number of units within a building could change while the exterior appearance of the building could remain the same. The applicant had initially proposed just to allow a lower minimum lot area per unit in R8 PDs generally. As you saw in your packet, they've amended that request. They have proposed to limit that text amendment to only buildings that include underground parking structures. Staff has suggested as an alternative to consider a geographic boundary that is coterminous and adjacent to the BNSF corridor area because that is the area defined by our comprehensive plan as the transit-oriented development area designated for somewhat higher densities. So if the village board were inclined to allow higher densities, we feel like that is the most appropriate geographic area to allow.
Just one follow-up question. So does the parking, the underground parking factor into that lot area per unit at all?
No.
Okay.
Just for my edification, my understanding, in a planned development with FAR, because it's a planned development and special use, we have the option to grant petitioner relief whichever way we want. Is that correct?
Correct. The village board and through the recommendations of the plan commission has the authority to modify the regulations of the zoning code for planned developments, which are evaluated on a case-by-case basis against the standards of the zoning code for planned developments. The reason that they're proposing a text amendment for the minimum lot area per unit is because that discretion is limited on that one standard in our current code.
But this is a common practice using planned development. That's why we have planned development. Otherwise, we wouldn't get developments like this done without giving them relief.
Absolutely, planned developments are something that are used very commonly. It's a tool that we use very frequently here in Grange. As you're all familiar, we've had many recent planned developments. And the intent of the planned developments per the zoning code, as I said, is to provide flexibility in the zoning regulations to achieve an outcome that is more desirable than what could be achieved under strict adherence to the zoning guidelines.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? All right, having heard none, would the applicant like to give their presentation, please?
behalf of the applicant. The applicant is here. His design team is here. Ms. Mancini from my law office is here, and the Wardick. And our engineer is here as well. So before I get started, if it's appropriate, I'd like to approach. I did bring, I didn't have a large amount of people come into this location, but I've actively talked to many members of the community. Obviously, last night, the Grange Business Association spoke favorably from the business perspective and the need for density in this area. If appropriate, may I present this to the chairman or council to deliver, give it a step? It's a list of about 40 or so people that are in support of the project in the community and the business locations. Could have gotten more, but the point is that people are in support, and I don't like to take people out, their nights, especially last night with the NCAA tournament. So anyway, so I appreciate the opportunity to come back. I appreciate the process. It's working. This ended up being a nice project as it relates to community involvement, plan commission, boards, department heads, our team. Obviously, I mentioned the community. We've listened to everything that you had to say, and we've applied what we thought to be appropriate. So there's two things that I want to go through, and Cherry, thank you very much for going through that. This will shorten our presentation substantially as it relates to the changes, but there are some additional changes I want to go through, and I do want to reflect for the purpose of discussing the changes from an architectural point of view from the architect. But before I get started, I'd like for Jeff to come and speak to Commissioner Schwartz's question, just so that we're clear on that from the very get-go. And may I move around, or would you like me stuck to this podium? Whatever I like.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is it okay if I move away from the podium?
Yeah,
thank you.
Sure.
Just the one issue that Commissioner Schwartz about the garage, where it pops up and, okay, yep.
Can I go over to the board?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Be easier. So previously, the garage was along the property line. We had this little dog leg here. We'd always kept back 6.5 feet from the dog leg, but then the garage went along the property line all the way to 6. So what we've done is we've eliminated the storage in the garage on this half of the building and pushed the garage wall back 6.5 feet. So the line of the garage is now where you see this little, it's 18 inches to 3 feet high, depending on where you're standing, of a little garden wall for the planter that we're going to right up against the building. So now we have a natural green space of 6.5 feet from the property line, and on our landscape plan, we're showing different trees, shrubs, so to really make this a natural green space all the way along from 6, halfway through the building, and then continue that 6.5 foot all the way to 7. So we have a continual green space, planted space on the entire southern border of the building now, and then we have about a 3-foot planter along the south facade for these 3 units as it relates to the condominium building to the south. So the garage has been pushed back to natural landscape.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so most important thing here is I want you to look at this building. This building is from, I think, October is when we started this process. It's changed, it's dramatically improved. We've added a bunch of elements. But I want you to look at this building to start with the understanding that, and I'm going to explain MLA later because we keep on talking about FAR and we're talking about MLA. Under any of the percentages that we talk about, and I will talk about it in great detail, the building doesn't change, just the amount of units. So if it's 40 units, 10 units, 50 units, the building does not change in size. That's critical to this whole thing, and I think that was where we sort of missed each other, on the 2, and then even yesterday, and I think it's on us. We didn't explain it right. Okay? So, and I'm going to go through the explanation because it's very, very important. But if you understand the distinction between what we're going to call bulk, and I'm going to show some pictures that are rather, bulky, and I just want to show you the difference, but I'm not going to do it now. I want to transition. But this building doesn't change under any MLA change. So if it's 10 units, 30 units, 50 units, the building structure and the visual we see here does not change. So that'll be important for our later discussion. Okay, so we're not going to go over too much of this stuff. The only thing that was a little bit different from what was discussed was by Charity, was that the sight lines, we've added that bump out, so that people are safer and there's better sight lines on the corner of 6th and Burlington. It would be the southeast portion of that intersection. So obviously we heard you, we moved the building back from our original structures, 6 additional feet. We're 10 feet now, 10 and a half.
It graduates, it's 10 and a half in the southwest corner, up to 9 and a half on the northwest corner, just because of the way the street is.
Got it. So we developed that concept that the Plan Commission requested. This was already talked about, the 15-foot setback, clear, but we're going to show some additional pictures. This was before. This was after. And this is just another visual looking at that new gap that's been created to create. So what's interesting to note is that our building from the property line is about 10 to 10 and a half feet. From the property line to this building is 5 feet. Okay? So my understanding is this building, if built today, would be further to the south. So we've actually, close to code, I think we have to be 12 or 13 feet. I'll defer to Charity on that one, but the issue is that we've created that 15-foot gap, and the situation would probably likely be better if the building to the south was further south. So what we also heard is issues related to bulk, okay, and MLA. So bulk is the size of the building on the unit. So what we did is to eliminate additional, we separated it from 11 South, but also got rid of the annex in this particular picture. So now you have a far longer feel from that annex. Now, the plaza, it's now wide open. Okay? There's no annex there to prevent. We still kept the features that Jackson Storage features here. And still, it's a beautiful, beautiful building, but now I've eliminated bulk. Forget MLA, I've eliminated bulk on the site. Before I go on, does everyone agree that does eliminate bulk? Do we understand that if I left this here, everything would be more bulky because there's more bulk? Actually, go down to the, we might as well show that now. Go down to the, keep going. Keep going. Oh, is it? No, it's not. Okay. This is bulk. This is property line to property line. Not inferring that we would build this structure. This is a bulky building which could be built on the site. This is bulk. This has nothing to do with MLA. Okay? Let's go back to the beginning. To the, where we left off. Already discussed by staff that we added the brick. Jeff, if you can talk about a couple of the features that will be changed up here, just in terms of the type of changes you made based on these photos. Next photo.
Sure. In the southeast corner where the delivery and loading zone was, we used to have a stair tower. I pulled that back into the building. We've added a full masonry tower on the southeast corner, the southwest corner, and also the northeast corners. So we've added masonry in the full height of the building. We've also added a matching cornice line. So all the major corners of the building now have are architectural elements added to them to match what's going on with some of the architectural design we have. So we really dressed up the corners in respect to the streetscape of each facade. As you can see here, that was just another view of 6th Street, how we've added the masonry, pulled all the balconies away from the adjacent condominium building and then dressed up the corner and then continued the articulated cornice lines to match what's going on.
That was different than before, right?
Right, it didn't have that before, it was more flat facade and we dressed it.
That's what was that, any changes there?
This is just an elevation, you can kind of see in the distance, the varying cornice lines. You can see on the northeast corner, we have another tower element as well.
All right, so the other thing we did here is that there was a situation, so those are some of the changes in addition to what Jerry obviously told you about. The other situation is to change the text amendment. So what I heard from the Plan Commission was things related to precedent. What kind of precedent are we changing by reducing 910, which is the minimum amount of MLA, to 740? We just said, we're changing the text. So what we asked, they said, well, can we limit it just to 2 things? One, with buildings that are infill in a certain location have underground parking. Not very many. So we will limit to however you want on the text amendment, but this limits it and makes a smaller amount of sites, okay? So we've changed it to just whatever's in the BNSF corridor, which is a few sites, or anything with underground parking. The reason why that's a good restriction, will eliminate precedent, is because of the fact that there's not many sites that dive down like this. Underground parking is very expensive. We're happy that we have a lot with the topography to allow underground parking, but this change to the text amendment, again, hearing your concern regarding precedent, this will help eliminate that. So we talked about the public amenities and improvements. I think since that time period, we've added design features. We're matching along Burlington and 6th the facade that exists throughout the rest of downtown LaGrange. So the consistency will be there. There'll be a connection to that east side of town finally for purposes of a visual and beautification. I talked about the sidewalk bump out and most of the other things that we talked about earlier on, I don't want to repeat because you've heard them probably now for the 3rd time. What I didn't present it the first 2 times was these stormwater improvements, which under our code improves between 1,153 and 1,394%. That's 1,394% improvement with this development. 1,394%. Right now, water just flows into our system. It's insanity. This will correct that. So you heard Charity talk about the PUD, and she cited the same section I am. We're thinking alike in terms of how these things work. The purpose of the planned development is critical. It's within a planned development, the traditional use, bulk space, and yard regulation may be relaxed if they impose inappropriate limitations on the proposed development or redevelopment of a parcel of land that lends itself to an individual planned approach. This is an odd-shaped parcel with a drop, with a building that we have to construct around, the Becknell building. It's just not a normal site. They don't exist. If you apply those code sections that now exist to this particular site, it'll never work. And I think it was Commissioner Schwartz who brought up at the last meeting is that this is like urban R8. It's not just R8, it's urban R8. And a lot of the towns, if you were listening to the board meeting yesterday, I know some of you were there at the board meeting yesterday, a lot of the towns are changing their codes to get to this point where we have urban fill, because guess what? Your comprehensive plan demands density in the downtown. And this is the way to do it, is to change the code, tweak the code to accomplish those purposes. Go to the next one. So, as we discussed yesterday, which may have not been presented to you, The comprehensive plan supports this development, adjustments to minimum lot size and BNSF corridor to better utilize properties to provide varied housing, encourage higher housing densities. Encourage higher, this is in your comprehensive plan. So, before I go on, before I get into this and the density, are there any questions? I don't know if that's appropriate or not. I'll move on.
I think it's best to complete your presentation.
Fair enough. So, go back. So, what we're finding out is based on the Tracy Cross report and the recent March 10th article from the Tribune, is middle housing, range 425 to 700,000, is the new thing that villages need and what is lacking in the market. It's downsizers, but more importantly, kids with college debt that are getting out of it, getting their first job, getting better jobs, people starting, before they start a family, are moving into this location. It's the trend. It's the biggest trend that I've seen in any housing market is now, because for a long time during the recession, the Great Recession, that was what's missing. All right, so that's it. We're going to go on to a quick explanation of bulk requirements. This is bulk. This is what we build as a matter of right. Keep going. Keep going. This is what we're proposing. A lot less bulk. Okay. Underground parking, nothing over, and additional amenities that are available to the community. All right, let's go to that one, that back one. All right, so now this is an important slide, and again, I regret not showing this slide because it explains MLA to perfection, right? A couple boxes, we'll explain it. The current site, obviously, is not the shape of the site, but for purposes of ease of view, the current site is 37,000 square feet, okay? 37,000 square feet. Based on the calculation, the MLA calculation, to achieve the 910 square feet of MLA, which your code requires as a PUD, I have to add 8,500 square feet of parking outside. So if I could acquire the Becknell building, which would be close to that, which I can't because it's bought, sold, and developed as we speak, if I had that, I would add 26 parking spaces and comply with the code. However, I don't have any space to do outside parking, nor do I want outside parking. I instead have 26,400 square feet of underground parking, which yields 83 parking spaces. So the dynamic of the code favors outdoor parking and less outdoor parking than our ability. So this is why the MLA is a little bit outdated, especially for a site that solely absorbs parking. Keep going. All right. Yesterday I went through all the numbers and the comparisons to Uptown and to 40 South Ashland and the rest. Like me to go through that again? Would that be valuable to you? Okay, let's go back to where we started the poll. No, the existing presentation. Go off that where it's inserted poll. Okay, so this maximum lot area that we're talking about, in the Uptown development, although it was a C1 development, our MLA that we're proposing is 740, and it's 787, 787 without the annex. Those are our numbers, if we're talking about just numbers. The Uptown project on the residential side of things had a 610, so lower, doesn't qualify with the existing RA code. It was a C1 or C3 development, but didn't comply. In fact, the minimum unit size in your code is 850 square feet. So if I have an apartment or a condo, it has to, according to your code, it has to be 850 square feet. So not only did they not meet the MLA, they did not meet the requirements of your minimum unit size. Our minimum unit size is 1,100 square feet. Okay? 11 South 6th, the property immediately next door, most of the members here that have spoken, is at 830 square feet. The Prosino site, above the inland development back then, is at 523 square feet. 65 East Harris is at 523 square feet. So the issue of whether or not we are going below what's been approved in the village before is not accurate. We're actually going up. In our most recent project, we have less of an issue with MLA than did the Uptown project.
Excuse me, Phil, I don't want to interrupt you, but do you mind just going back to the slide? I just want to correct one thing.
Sure.
11 South 6th and 26 South 6th, those are, or I'm sorry, 26 South 6th and 65 East Harris are both located on the block immediately south of the subject property. 65 East Harris is.
Oh, these are south. We meant to get the Prosino site.
It's not the Prosino building. Those are the two that straddle the Gables condominium building on either side. They're early 1900s construction.
Got it. So I guess we got the wrong one, but I will get the numbers before the board meeting here just to figure out what is Prosino, but clearly those units are way smaller than the 610. So anyway, this shows a transition and it shows, that we're above the Uptown. All right, go ahead. Talk about that. Oh, go back up one. So in order to get to the 787 from 740, okay, in order for me to get to that number, I have to eliminate 3 units. Okay? So there are 2 units in the annex. If those go, and I make a lobby where the apartments are, then I get to 787 from 740. So we have a maximum lot coverage of 82.8. Again, this is not MLA, there's nothing to do with it, but we want a comparison. Without the annex, we get to 79%. Uptown has coverage for the residential side of the equation of approximately 90%. 40 South Ashland's at 75.3, go up 1. So 40 is South Ashland, 75. We're between 79 and 82, up to the very dense Uptown of 90%. So these are some other things that we discussed as it relates to height. So we're at 53 feet at 6th Avenue because of the drop in grade. We're at 53 at 6th, 63 at 7. Front yard between 9 and 10. The Uptown height, which is why this is important. The village changed the structure of the ordinance when it was important to do so. So allow them to is it C3 or C1? C3 district, you're allowed 5 stories and 70 feet. Uptown is 6 stories and 77 feet. We're at 53 and 63, we're below that. We're a little taller than the 40 feet next to us, admittedly, but by 13 feet. As opposed to 50 South Ashland, which is 53 feet 8 inches. They have 8 inches of front yards and 11 feet 10 inches of corner side yard. Now you remember the structure of ours is that we have a very large plaza in the front. So we have that openness field to eliminate the bulk. That looks good. That's good. All right, so sort of leave this part of it. I'm almost done. If bulk is truly the issue, if bulk, that big picture of that big ugly building, if that's the issue, then we can remove the annex to eliminate that bulk. We listened to you, we moved it away from 11 South to limit the bulk on their side. So we've done some of these things to eliminate bulk. If the annex goes, that's fine, that'll open it up a little bit, and we won't have a bulk issue. I have talked to the community, I've talked to staff, I've talked to, in front of us, I've talked to my clients. I cannot think of a compelling reason in today's market, at this price point, why we would want to reduce the number of units. I can't come up with a reason. If it's parking or traffic, but these things have all been talked about. Eliminating the number of units affects only one group of people. It's our businesses. So I don't understand if the building stays the same. I would hope to come to some sort of consensus that the unit number isn't what's bothering everybody. And if it's not the units, then the MLA should be part of the discussion, and the board should then come up with some sort of exception to the code to get us to the numbers. So that's sort of the distinction, and that's the best I can do. I've thought about this since January or February meeting on how to best explain it. That's the best I can do. And if I didn't explain it, I would love to ask questions, and maybe someone else could come and explain it better than I, but that's sort of where we're at. I don't want to see. Add something, go down. Okay, let's go back to the top slide. All right, I'll leave you with this before the questions to staff and so forth, is that I've done zoning work for 22 years. I have been in front of almost every municipality that you can see in the western suburbs and the south suburbs. This process is great. We've absorbed, we've changed, we came to this beautiful project, okay? The system worked. However, what's very interesting about this is that everybody that I've talked to from here likes to look at the, not everybody, most everybody likes to look at the project, likes the concept of having more density in the downtown, likes the beautification to the area and the other uses and amenities. But I've never been involved in a situation where everybody has some little concern that's different than the other person. And that's what's causing us to continue on and on with this process. And that's okay. I just want to come to some sort of consensus. I don't think that under any scenario, any zoning that I've ever done, everybody is happy with every single project. It's not possible. So what I really would like today is some more feedback as it relates to how I can answer more questions, or how we can get to a point where we have a project that we all can move forward happily.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for the applicant? I have a question. You put the parking lot from 6th to 7th, right? Or 7th to 6th. Are there still going to be parallel parking in there?
There will be tandem parking, yes.
Or tandem parking?
Yes.
Okay, that's just curious about that. Thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I go back to the beginning of your conversation, and you showed this picture, and the comment was, it's not going to matter if there's 10 units, 30 units, or 50 units. It's going to look like this. I didn't really hear the good explanation of that.
So,
Give me, in one sentence, how is that possible?
for purposes, now, not density, not bulk, not anything related, for purposes of the MLA.
But let's talk about people walking by. Let's talk about the people who are sitting here.
That's
How is
right.
that possible?
For purposes of MLA.
Most people care about what they're going to see, and I think most people don't care what the calculation is. I see the residents here, they're looking at the building going, man, it's big. And then you show this picture, and the comment is, I don't care how many units there are, it's going to be this big.
No. Okay, so I get the perspective, and I apologize. I'm not suggesting that the Plan Commission or the board is going to approve the size of this building. This is why I'm missing everybody on this. The MLA, okay, for purposes of the calculation, if I increase the size of these units to the point where I have $1 million price points, okay, and I reduce the number of units from 50 to 40, but they're bigger units, I qualify, and the MLA isn't a factor in your decision. We've made a business decision that we do not want to be in the $1 million market for two reasons. It's very hard to sell $1 million condos. And number two, the market, 30% of the people in the market are looking for middle market. And those 30% are shoppers, eaters, hanger-outers, whatever you want to call them. They want to be in our community and use the services in our community, not the services, the amenities in our community. So I apologize for the fact I was not trying to be presumptuous. My main concern is that no one has made that connection with me mentally yet that MLA is understandable. And we've explained it every which way that I possibly can. Does that help with the understanding of why I said that?
The simple explanation of, yeah, I'm just gonna give you bigger units, that I understand. And I understand, yeah, bigger units are gonna cost more and you couldn't work.
That's right.
That's very simple.
That's MLA.
But let's sell it to the residents. I don't think they're not gonna come away from this meeting saying, well, MLA, that's great. They're gonna say, well, it's a big building, or they're expensive condos, or they're very marketable reasonable condos. I think that's the gist of it.
And absolutely. I just wanted to explain, my purpose was to explain MLA, because that's what people keep on interacting between MLA and FAR. So that's why I wanted to make sure that there was an understanding. Yep, you got it.
There's something that's not being said, it's the gorilla in the room. These architectural designs, the underground parking, the acquisition of this property is very expensive. So if this is going to be built at this location as a fill-in for multifamily, there is a fixed cost that requires more units than maybe what you're imagining in your mind. And that's the reason why we have to have a building, not only that, but then we also have to accommodate parking. We started this process in August. The builder said, you can't have street parking. We said, okay, we can do that. Here's how we got to do it. We got to dig a hole in the ground, which is very expensive, to build a garage underneath the building. So all of this architecture, this isn't 4 brick walls going up with some condo units. This is design architecture, different pieces of material, different natural substances, iron. The annex portion of the building is an aluminum curtain. That's not cheap to build all these things. Glass on top. So that's the pull and the push here of this project that we keep running into. There has to be a certain level of units to justify the financing, justify the sales, and justify the acquisition and the build. That's the reality that we're facing. So that's why we can't change the footprint very much, because we have to get the parking in, and we have to get all of these things in. And if we get the parking in, it's going to cost X. Whether we build 30 units there, or we build 50 units there, if we build 30, we have to have 45 parking, 1.5 per unit, right? So we still have to dig the garage out. We still have to do that work. So shrinking the building, it's not a big difference in fixed costs. And the architect could speak to that, and, talking about how the setbacks, putting 5 foot here, taking 5 foot from there, that doesn't work. And if it worked, we would have given it to you. Jeff, you want to address that a little bit as to why we just can't take 5 feet off different addresses and
Sure. Regardless of the number of units above ground, the basement level of the garage is what it is. We're trying to get maximum parking in the site. Regardless of how many units are above ground, we'll have 2 elevators, we'll have multiple stairwells, trash, mail. So all those are fixed entities. And I think just going back to the MLAs, that if you had 4 units per floor and they were ginormous, we would hit the MLA. If you had 10 units per floor, so there's economies in creating a balance of unit sizes for the market. And I think we're there. We've got some modest sized units, and we've got some larger units, and it's just to spread out the costs of the building.
I think the way I understand it from both points of view, from your point of view and from the neighbor's point of view, you think you can just take the end of the building, wherever the condo's in, cut it off, put a wall there, you lose the bulk. But they can't do that because their costs aren't changing. So it can't be done. I mean, we think differently than they do. They know more about what it's going to cost them than what we do and what it takes to build this. Is that a simplified version?
It is, and there's also architectural impacts of changing because it's a confined lot. You know, it's a weird lot. We talked about last time with Planning Commission squeezing the building north to south a little bit. You have to have so much distance between the front door to the window in a unit to be commercially acceptable. You have to have so much distance in your halls to be commercially acceptable. So you can't squeeze the building anymore. That building is about as narrow as we can get it to accommodate the commercially reasonable standards of condo building. So these are all of the factors that go into our, and we didn't do a good job of explaining it in February. I didn't do a good job of explaining it, frankly. I'll own that. But that's the realities that were communicated to you, but were talked about with staff in the months leading up to the January, February meeting, but it wasn't conveyed to you because we just gave you the pretty picture and you didn't see all the work behind it. As lawyers, I do a lot of litigation. You go to closing argument, you got to go back and read the complaint because that's how the whole lawsuit started. We failed in going back and advising you on what the initial position was. We weren't presenting you again with a four-wall brick building. We were presenting you an architecturally significant building that had limitations by the nature of the lot. And that's what we're trying to do.
What's the length across the building? Let's talk about the south side. South side.
We'll get it right now. Hold on.
So the south facade? Correct. South facade is 301 feet.
So and maybe this is, again, and I'll plead ignorance as being a lawyer, not an architect, but, and I'm not trying to challenge this, I'm trying to have you explain it to me further. If the length is 300, just call it 300 feet as opposed to 275, I guess I'm not sure I understand common sense wise why the cost of building that's 300 feet wide as opposed to 275 feet wide is an absolute fixed cost. When you have cost of materials, you have excess number of square footage that's going to be lopped off the building. I'm not suggesting that that's where this is going. I just want to understand that point further because I don't think it's an absolute. You know, it's not an absolute that no matter what, no matter how far the building is across, it's a fixed cost even though you're digging underground. That is not the case, right?
We do have a fixed cost with our garage, or elevators, or stairs, or lobbies, or amenities.
But if you take the building in, you have less parking spots, right?
No, we'll keep the garage where it's at. If we lose parking, then
Why would you? If you take the building in, why would you need to keep the exact same footprint for the exact number of parking spaces? That's what I'm saying. So let's say you were to take the building in, and I'm just talking hypothetical, so I can understand this. If you were to bring the building in, let's say you went from 50 units to 46, I'm just picking a number, you would need that, 4 units times 1.5, you need that many less parking spaces. So why would it be the same footprint, the same fixed cost? I guess I'm not understanding that.
It's not the same fixed cost. It's minimally different because you're still getting a crane out there to dig the hole. You're still getting the engineers out to shore up the land. You're still doing all of the work that's required. You're just removing less dirt, or you're removing less dirt is what your position is for the garage. But what happens when you remove that less dirt is you lose less revenue up the stream because you can't build another unit to cover the cost that you have fixed. This is a balancing act of costs versus potential revenue from the sales. Banks have to authorize us to build this structure. We have to come to them with a business plan that says, here's the fixed cost. Whether we dig a parking garage that's 20 feet, 275 feet or 300 feet, that number doesn't change, but 10 grand? You're not talking about anything significant in relation to the construction of the building above and all the costs that you have to cover to do that. So that's the answer to the question is all of the same work has to get done. All of the same engineering has to get done. All of the big ticket items that have to get done still have to get done. Whether you build a 300-foot garage or a 275-foot garage.
Again, I understand that, but having been involved in many negotiations of AAA contracts, you've got plenty of builders in the village that build 6-unit buildings. And if you're telling me that the cost is fixed no matter what, if they're going in there and digging out ground, then somehow they make it work as opposed to 50 units. So that is not exactly, I think, a true reflection of what the cost is, right?
Yeah, so I guess the fixed cost is what we're talking about, so it's reducing the amount of square footage, so what is it, $300 a square foot is the approximate price? Yeah, $300 square foot times whatever we lose is sort of where we're at. So that's sort of where you have the fixed costs, which is everything that causes to build a building, and then you do it that way. So I guess my question is it's very, do you mind if I ask you a question? Sure. Why do you ask that? Why do you ask the question of let's say, shrinking the size of the building from 6 to 7?
Because the overwhelming comment that I hear from people, including what I heard last night, from those that on this village board that I got the sense were hesitant in terms of their feedback was, and what I just heard a little while ago, is that the building, again, has a size of it that's very large, and I think is also the biggest feedback that we get for people that comment about the Uptown project, the Ashland project, myself included. I think the Ashland project is too big.
Got it. So you're talking about bulk.
So I don't want to get into an issue, because I agree with you, the context of, whether we're going to talk about bulk versus FAR versus MLA, it doesn't matter to me, because that is just a matter of, and there's always ways to potentially play with the size, like you said, the size of the units, in order to come up with potentially alternatives about, the variances that are being requested. And I think you and I have talked about this, which is, I'm not as concerned about, for instance, the parking, right? So if there's a way that we can shrink the parking, I know there was a comment last night about the tandem parking. That's not a concern for me at all. I guess what I'm trying to understand is there a way to bring the footprint in, to build a smaller building to make this business plan still work for you guys? I'm just trying to understand, is there a solution there?
Got it. And I wasn't trying to get in it with you.
I agree. I'm just trying to, so you understand where I'm coming from.
I got it. So what we had that calculation, reducing the size of the building on the 6th Avenue side yields how much square footage of less bulk? 1,800. So if I cut off that and I'm even with 40 South, or 11 South, right? I lose 1,800 square feet of buildable bulk, right? How much do I lose if I get rid of the annex?
It's roughly 8,500 to 9,000.
So the whole density and bulkiness, everything, I now 6,700 more square footage gets removed from that site. So that doesn't cause me nearly as much problems in terms of density than cutting into that building, reconfiguring, engineering, re-architecting, going through, making sure this works, and losing sellable units. That square footage. So if we're talking about the look, the size, the bulk, the density, that calculation, then it's better just to get rid of the annex. Would you mind putting up without the annex again? That's beautiful.
Hang on a second here. This is discussion, although interesting, has been going on a little too long. We've got a lot of work to do here tonight. We have other commissioners that have questions. We have the public that has questions. You guys don't seem to be agreeing on this, so let's agree to disagree and move on, okay? Thank you. Go ahead.
My question follows yes.
The same thing? Okay. Anyone else have questions for the applicant? All right. Having heard none, I'm going to go open it up to questions from the audience. Now, there's a lot of people here that probably have a lot of questions, so I'm going to limit your time to 3 minutes. All right?
Questions?
Make your comments brief and to the point. And come up to the dais, speak into the microphone, tell them what your name is.
Matthew Klein, I represent the 11 South 6th Street property.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Matthew Klein.
Okay.
And I'm attorney, I represent the 11 South 6th condominium property. As far as the question, my first question would be, I understood you to be proposing removing the annex. Is it your position that you are taking the annex off the table, or are you proposing to keep the annex as part of the discussion?
Sorry, what's the question?
You said you were going to remove the annex. Are you keeping the annex or removing the annex?
I'm asking the visual from the plan commission. We want to globally come up with a decision as it relates to what this PUD looks like. So without the annex, with the annex, we're not good.
Yesterday at the village board, there were people that liked the annex. The annex is probably the least objectionable part of the building for my clients because it's farthest away, it's adjacent to the railroad. Have you considered increasing the annex to get your unit count there so that you have the ability to move the building further away from the 11 6th Street condominium and farther away from 6th Street?
You can't do it.
You can't do it, you have a fixed building, can you,
It's all about the parking. So we have a rectangular parking garage underground where we're trying to do a drive out, minimum parking spaces, on each side of the drive out. So if we try and shift the building away, we'll remove all that parking.
Excuse me, could you keep the microphone close to your mouth, please? We're in trouble here.
It really is the case that the plan commission is your audience.
So if we try and shift the building to the north, what happens is that the garage has a jog, and we can't do a jog in this amount of area in the drive aisle. So, we'll still have an exposed garage lid along the south. So that's not going to move.
Is it possible
It's
to
not-
put a jog in a parking garage?
Not in this amount of space.
I respectfully disagree with you on that one. Did you consider, if you widened the annex, having a T parking lot so that you would have a double-loaded parking where there is already going to be a hole in the ground where you're excavating with access?
The plaza is being used for the stormwater management, and so anything we do that reduces the plaza area, and Mike can speak to this, is detrimental to maintaining stormwater for the site.
Also, we can't access off Burlington at that location. It's not below grade as it is on 7. So you would literally have to dig a hole in Burlington, and you put an elevator in to drop your car down to the parking garage.
Yeah, I'm a civil engineer, Mike Jones from Subcon. Yes, underneath the plaza is utilized for stormwater retention to meet the variety requirements. But additionally, we also have analyzed the turning movements, and the site's just too small. You can't have a drive aisle and rotate and then pull into a spot. It's, other than an elevator, it's not possible.
You can put up the parking level slide. Yeah, it's from yesterday's report. So you got it.
Now, I'm not even going to get into the 10 parking spaces, but would it be possible if you remove 2 parking spaces or 1 handicap space to be relocated so that you would put a double-loaded parking aisle, probably able to get about 8, 10, 12 parking spaces underneath a double-loaded area here. If you move the building up a few feet, you probably could get some of your drainage here. You probably could do some roof storage. You probably could store on the frontage. If you pulled this back a little bit, you'd have area you could get your drainage storage there.
Yeah, I've looked at this building, multiple ways over the past year at different parking scenarios and working with engineers, and this is the best case scenario. Trying to create a T in this location, we're going to need about 65 to 70 feet. we'd only really get maybe 3 or 4 spaces here, so we actually lose parking. Then we're also impacting once again, the stormwater. This is on Burlington, is about 6 or 7 feet out of the ground. So you'd have a big blank wall unaccessible to any kind of pedestrians along this edge here by trying to bring the parking to the north.
We've done that same parking analysis, and you lose stalls. This is the biggest investments.
Any other questions from the audience? Questions or comments? Please, go right ahead.
Comment on that.
Yeah, both. Questions or comments?
Good evening. My name is Jane Weiringard. I am the owner of Unit 83116. This is the 9-unit condo building that is on the property directly adjacent to the proposed condo development, known as Grange condominiums, that is under discussion tonight. I have owned since December 1995. Our condo is self-governed, self-managed. We are also an owner-occupied building. I'm going to read fast so I can get this through. I and other owners of the condos in the 11th Avenue condo building are not objecting to a condo or other development at Burlington 6th and 7th Avenues. Our objection is that the proposed condo development is too big for the size of the land parcel that is available. The developer understands this, and it was explained by the developer not only tonight, but also at the Planning Commission meeting held February 12th, that it would not be possible to build the proposed complex on this parcel of land without getting approval for zoning variances. Even with the proposed changes presented at the LaGrange Village Board meeting last night, the request for zoning variances is what is objectionable. Yes, the proposed changes make the development much more palatable. It is more in keeping with the present zoning laws. At the same time, the variances still requested are significant. Perhaps even more alarming is that the developer is asking that the requested zoning variances be a text amendment change to the zoning laws now in place. This would mean that any asked for variances approved and granted by the village board would be permanent and would forever replace the present zoning codes of LaGrange. I would like to respond to a specific comment made by a village board member last night. This board member suggested that we at 11-6 would be pleased once the development was built. He explained that the sounds from train traffic would be lessened. Well, I personally love the sounds from the trains. On the contrary, I don't like the sounds of partying, and I am concerned about the plan from the developer to possibly have a club room that would be a gathering place for nightlife activity. To address the issue of money and budgets, LaGrange has already approved several large developments in the past few years, both condo and apartment complexes. These developments generate a lot of tax dollars for LaGrange. The proposed LaGrange condominium development would also generate a lot of tax revenue for LaGrange. I understand that it is important that our village generate enough income to balance its budget. It is important for all of us. At the February 12th meeting, the developer spoke of the need for more foot traffic to support the businesses in LaGrange, as did the speaker from the LGBA at last night's meeting, that more LaGrange residents are needed to create this foot traffic. I know that there have been businesses that have come and gone in recent years, but there are also businesses in LaGrange that attract quite a bit of business. Some of these businesses have been in LaGrange for years. To list a few examples, Blueberry Hill, Core Power Yoga, Trader Joe's, Al's Steakhouse, Village Hardware, Palmer's. These businesses and other successful LaGrange businesses are supported by both LaGrange residents as well as non-residents. They provide what customers need and want. This brings me back to the issue of tax dollars to be available for LaGrange. A lot of tax dollars come from property taxes. So yes, this proposed condo complex would generate a lot of revenue for LaGrange. But at what expense to the community? When density increases, demand for infrastructure goes up, property value goes down. The LaGrange condominium proposal in its present available form is too dense for the land area that is being considered. I am reminded of the Aesop fable, the goose that laid the golden eggs. A man had a goose that laid 1 golden egg each day. The man was happy, but then decided he didn't want only 1 egg each day. He decided to kill the goose and have ready and immediate access to all the eggs. We all know what happened. Approval of this development, as now proposed, would be akin to killing the goose. I propose that the plan for the Grange condominium complex be revised so that it can be built without the need for zoning variances. Grange would still receive additional tax dollars without compromising our village's many and significant positives that make it a desirable and attractive place for individuals and families to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience?
My name is Jeremy Justice. I am also one of the owners at 11 South 6th Avenue. And, you know, I felt like at the first meeting that we were at, we were really at odds. I do appreciate some of the concessions that the developers have made, but I kind of feel like we're almost starting from a midpoint. I happen to have a condo that is on the east side of the building. No matter what happens with this development, my north-facing windows are going to be facing a wall, whereas I do have some space to look at the street traffic and the trains. I have a nice view out of my east windows currently. I see the Brookfield Water Tower, and I see the skyscrapers in the morning when I'm up early enough. I can see a beautiful sunrise. That's definitely gone out of my northernmost east window, probably out of the southernmost. So I don't even want to get into property values. It's just going to not be as nice a place to live for me. I do appreciate what the developers have done above ground on the south end. I think that's something very workable for us. I very much like the idea of the planters that they have versus the wall that they initially proposed. It does create a lot of space for us, but I still don't think overall the development has gone down far enough. I think all the residents in our building are very concerned about that parking garage and how close it is underground to our foundation and what potentially could happen with that. And I don't know a lot about building codes. I don't know a lot about these requirements, but it certainly seems that they are asking for quite a bit in the maximum building coverage and maximum lot coverage, and it sets a bad precedent. I do understand the argument about the BNSF corridor to a certain degree about wanting to increase the density, but I am wondering, how far do we go? We have these tall buildings of Uptown, and on the north side of the building, and on the north side of the tracks in Beacon Hill. I mean, do we want to create a gauntlet of dense buildings where you can't even see the community? I think it's nice to have a mix, and I do agree that it is probably a very tough job on the Planning Commission and on the board to find that right mix. I think that this building as proposed is just too dense. One other side note though, I do appreciate that, I don't think it's been brought up here. They are talking about putting a historical marker in the plaza. I do like that idea very much. I hope whatever develops, I don't think that's a negotiating point, but I do hope that stays in. I wish we had something like that for the Cock Robin that used to be at Beacon Hill and for the Bridgeport YMCA. As far as I know, nothing exists there. So I do appreciate that they are considering doing that. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janessa Alney, the owner of 1A, where I live with my husband, and I've lived there for the past 3 years. I bought that unit as a starter home. And after reviewing the revisions and attending last night's meeting, we continue to have concerns regarding the density of the proposed building. We asked that there be a reduction in the number of units and a reduction in the number of stories, as it would dominate the surrounding area, and there are no other buildings on that block that are that tall. And while I'm glad that the developer is heading in what we see as the right direction as to setting the building back further from our property line, and there may be 15 feet between our building and the development at the ground level, there will still be only approximately 7 feet between our building and the proposed underground garage with overdig, and this could be detrimental to our 100-year-old building foundation. I would ask that the Plan Commission consider being consistent with the variances allowed as a precedent is being set, and to take into consideration that the development is going into a neighborhood with neighbors next door and right down the street, and that this shouldn't be compared to those such as Uptown, which is not in a residential area. It's not next to houses. Thank you.
Hi, you've met me before. My name is Mary McDonald. I own 2A. And I just want to kind of go back just a little bit, because from the first time we heard about this development, was actually after the January meeting, which for some reason we weren't noticed of. So we were behind the 8 ball from the get-go. And it seemed to me, when I was reading through plans and all of the minutes, that we, as condominium building, we were being completely disregarded, and that almost viewed as throwaways. Oh, well, we can just build right up to that lot line and who cares? Because I don't know that anybody really knew we were condominiums. We pay tax dollars. I shop as much as I can in Grange, personally. I eat in the restaurants all of the time. And I don't want to feel disregarded by the village or by the developer. I appreciate, though, that it seems that the attitude has changed and our voices are being heard more and more. And I find it very, very encouraging. We do think that the development is a good and proper use of the property, just simply too big. Everybody's mentioned, so I won't go too far here, the foundation in our building is nearly 100 years old. It's a really great building. She's beautiful. But she's fragile, like any 100-year-old entity would be. I imagine I'll be fragile when I'm 100 years old too. And so we have to protect it. And I'm worried about excavation and vibrations caused by the violence of demolition. Also, the north side of our building houses the only ingress and egress into our mechanicals rooms. And that's where our boiler, our electric, all of our utilities are. If during the construction process any sort of overdig compromises that, we can't use those mechanicals rooms. So I'm a little dismayed that no one has reached out, and maybe that's our fault, to say, hey, we're going to protect you. Here's what's going to happen. Maybe we could get on board a little better if we knew exactly what was going to happen. In last night's discussion at the trustees meeting, it was brought up that the zoning code in the village should probably be changed. And if this is true, then it should be up to the zoning commission to overhaul the code all at once, and it shouldn't be done piecemeal. A little here, a little there. As it stands now, we have to play by the rules, and we think that everybody should. Our building's been used last night and tonight as an example that we don't quite meet code. Well, it was built 100 years ago. I didn't build it. And my assumption is that it's grandfathered in, so using it as a comparison model is nonsense. But the question I do have is, this was mentioned last night, and I think I know what this means, but I'd like maybe one of the commission members or staff to answer. Fee for land, there's a fee for land option that was mentioned last night, and I'm wondering what that is. Charity?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you.
Our subdivision code has a requirement that there be the equivalent of 1 acre of land dedicated for public lands per every, help me out, Heather, 75 new dwellings or lots in a subdivision. So with the recent Mason Point development, because that site was less, because the requirement would have required less than 1 acre, the village took a fee, a cash fee, in lieu of a land dedication for public land. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It does. Okay. And so I know that you're all concerned about economics. We all are. Everybody is. And I'm putting my trust in the village officials to protect me, protect my family over here, and to oversee that we all play by the rules. And just add, one of the things that I would ask is that the parking garage, maybe it could be moved in so that it is directly under the first floor. Not, jutting out, I know it's underground, but, farther out than the walls of the building. And maybe that would help bring it back, because it's considered as part of the MLA or the whatever, land area ratio. Maybe that would help bring that back down and to a more code compliant state. There's still room, I think, if they make it smaller, for the developer to be profitable and while maintaining mindfulness of the community and the residents. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience?
Matthew Klein, again, some statements. First of all, if I can pass out a couple pictures. I'm trying to be loud. There's 3 large buildings that the village has approved over the last several years. Each of them, the 410 and 420 Burlington, 14 Ashland and 40 Ashland, each have substantial setbacks on the side that are abutting other properties. On the 410 and 420, there's a driveway for each building adjacent to one case, the multifamily building. In the other case, a single-family residence. Now, both types of setbacks would be present on this property. Again, it provides a space in between them to allow very large developments, comparable, unlike the 2 built properties across the tracks. Which did not have residential or other adjacent properties. On this side of the tracks, the large buildings, I think they've got a set there. There was enough of a setback to separate the uses. Here, 10 foot, 20 foot on the south property line would provide that separation, would provide protection of the construction of the old building at 11 South. Better protected from the future construction and provide a little separation of use. That's one of the goals of the of zoning and one of the goals of your plan development. It's not automatic right that they get to go to 700 or 910 foot per unit instead of 1310 foot per unit. That is a discretion that you and the village board have based on quality and ability to provide a project that doesn't negatively impact the surrounding property owners and has a sufficient attribute to benefit, a beneficial attribute to the village. That adjacency on the south wall of this building to the north wall of the 11 South building is probably the biggest concern of my clients for obvious reasons. I would suggest that although the plans that have been done are well done, and it's a well-designed building, in a lot of ways they can do better as far as addressing that south wall. The overage of the tandem spaces on the south wall, they could be put on the north side instead of the south side. The building could be moved slightly. There's design issues, they'd have to redesign parts of it, but they can do these things without affecting the economics of their future development of it, which is their goal. The village's goal should be to provide something that's best for the village without negatively impacting the neighbors, and this is designed to do it. negatively impact the neighbors. I would suggest that even a small increase in the setback on 6th Street would be beneficial to neighbors. Their building is 15 feet from the sidewalk, best I can see from the plans and surveys. That's 5 feet. That's a small impact on this. Could easily be made up with design in what they refer to as the annex, one way or the other. Possibly getting additional units into what they're doing as the annex rather than at the west end of the building, still get the unit count they're seeking without affecting their economics from that issue. The village, again, has approved large buildings, and they've all had setbacks on the perimeter. The ones that have been developed in a similar situation where they're adjacent to existing residential, be it multifamily residential or single-family residential, the village has provided that setback. And again, using the same buildings as example, let's see if I can get charity these for 410, 420, 40, and side of 40. And again, these are similar buildings that the village has approved, different buildings, but there's spacing on the streetscape. So, late at the Euro pitch board last night, so I didn't have much time to actually do the nice packages I was prepared. Again, the Grange has approved large buildings, large residential buildings, but has provided for the spacing between them. And this building is currently proposed doesn't allow for that spacing.
Council, do you have no extra copies for us? Customarily, we,
I can give you some of them and get some of this. It's the
40 South Avenue.
it's just the faces of the buildings. I can get them to you.
Thanks, guys.
We talked about density and land coverage. There's many ways to regulate how density is calculated, and your ordinance has a square footage of land for each unit. That's one way. You also require setbacks from each of the streets. You require setbacks on the perimeter. You have a height limitation. And probably the most practical limitation on how many units a multifamily development is the parking that you require. You require 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which is a fairly reasonable standard. It's been established through the several buildings that you've approved that density. Your ordinance does not count the tandem spaces in calculating, so that there is a restriction there. And I would suggest there's a very good reason for that. With 28 spaces, if you have people with 2 cars who may go back in and out, they're just jockeying cars around with that number of tandem spaces. I don't believe that would be an amenity for the building. I think that's one of the things you're going to have, that doesn't affect my clients as much, but I think it is a limitation on the amount of building that can be put here that you should take into consideration, that how much building does affect the clients. That's the indirect impact. because this building is going to have almost all two and three bedroom units. They are more expensive units. They are much more likely to have two cars related to them. The 1.5 cars per dwelling unit that's in your ordinance. I think I was at some of the hearings when that regulation was set. Was based on buildings that had a range of uses. They had studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. Here at the large end of that spectrum, you have a much greater likelihood of the cars being produced by the occupants, the owners of the future owners of the units. I think that is a very realistic requirement. I allowing tandem spaces to satisfy it would not be in your best interest. The village's best interest and best interest of the future residents. So 2 practical limitations that restrict how many units they can at the ultimate size of the building are the square footage of land per unit. They're calling it MLA, I believe, but it's really a restriction that says for so many square feet of land, you can produce 1 unit. And that's a restriction that you have on density. That's how you get into it. As far as being restricted by the engineering and the provision of stormwater management, yes, they have to provide the stormwater management, but as I'm sure their engineer can tell you, there are a whole bunch of different ways to do it. Storm chambers per rainbow land, just street storage, roof storage. Some of them are more expensive, but they can be done. It is not impossible to use the hole that will be produced by the demolition of the Jackson storage building to put the parking in put some of the parking and some of the building closer to the Burlington Railroad than currently designed, and all would allow the building to move back to the north to a degree. Again, the goal of zoning and the goal of your ordinance is to balance the needs of the developer, landowner with the needs of the neighborhood. I think the building as designed weighs too heavily on impact on the neighborhood as opposed to in that balance. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience? Go ahead. One second. We have to step away for a second, so can we take your utility? Thank you. Go right ahead. Go ahead.
Patty Ernst, 425 South Kensington. And I guess my question is pretty simple. I'm a resident, we've been a resident here for 30 years. My husband and I have purchased and fixed up houses and sold them. When we buy a house, we know this is the land we have, these are the rules we have to follow. We have to submit a plan that meets the rules. If we submit the plan, the City of Chicago, it's not easy, and we have to submit a plan for the City of Berwyn. We hire a good architect, we put lots of time in it, it comes back. We have to change it. So, as a resident, it's bothersome, I think, for me and for a lot of people. So we have 2 sets of rules. Why would you purchase this property and not already have an idea of what you're going to be up against? So I just get this sense like, oh my goodness, we're trying to do this and we've been working on it since August. That's what it is. That's what the job is. So it's too big. It's too much. And the density now doesn't only hurt the people living right next to it, it hurts all of us. I don't want to be Oak Park. I don't care if you've been to a million other municipalities and they all make changes for the corridor. I want to be Oak Park or Downers Grove that is, put up so many big buildings for the sake of what? Who does it help? Doesn't fill my pocket. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments?
Matt Larson, I live at 15 6th Avenue. I spoke last night, so I'm going to repeat some of my comments since it's a new audience tonight.
First, I'd like to state I am supportive of the project. The existing structure there is, in my mind, not the best use of the property, so I think it'd be a great idea to get something more useful there. I'd also say I don't see any need to pay homage to the existing building, that we should pay homage to what the rest of the Grange looks like now moving forward. I don't see any problem with parking. I think if we're going to grab a variance, it'd be in the parking. This is a transit community that hopefully they're moving there to use Metro, to use public transit, to walk to our businesses. So if we are going to be granting variances, I think it should be focused on the parking, and that 1.5 number could be relaxed in my mind. But like you've heard before, I do feel the building's a little bit too big for the size of the area and the surroundings. And my two big points are, one, it'd be nice to see the building height the same as the other buildings in close proximity or right next to it. Not Beacon Place, not Uptown, which are in different areas. The second thing, and it hasn't been mentioned much, are the setbacks. I'm not sure what the code requires without variance, but I thought I heard last night 20 feet. And I think if we're going to stick on anything, it should be in the setbacks from the existing lots. And that should include the balconies. If the balcony is intruding on that setback, that is basically in the setback area. I think this could be accommodated by possibly scaling back the courtyard. I know this courtyard is being used for stormwater retention, but there are other ways of doing stormwater retention, and we don't need to hit that 1,000% number that was probably mentioned before. I do like the annex and the glass party room on top. I think that gives the building some architectural differentiation compared to a flat, basic front building. So I think it would be awful if we, to meet some density number, took away the annex and that top room, because that provides some very neatness to the area. Construction will be intense for a few years in this area, and I'm not sure if it's your discretion or the city council or boards, but I would propose having a group of local residents being involved in some type of advisory panel, so that if there are troubles during construction, we have a say in what is going on. It was mentioned earlier about the in lieu contribution. I would sure like to see if there is an in lieu contribution, that maybe money is used in the immediate area. For instance, there's a lot of cut-through traffic that goes to Ogden to LaGrange and vice versa. That cuts down 6th, 7th, probably Bluff. It'd be great to see if we could cut down on that and maybe use some of those funds to slow those cars down and remove some of those cars going at excessive speeds. I will say this development seems like the perfect type for this area. It's a transit area. It's a dense development. This is what we should be building. It'll help our business district. It'll improve transit by people taking public transit. So in summary, I'm hopeful this project moves forward. I think it's a great use of the land. I would just like to see it a little scaled back. And if we're going to budge on anything, budge on the building densities. Let's not budge on the setbacks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience? All right, having heard none, we'll go on to Commissioner's follow-up questions. Do you have any follow-up questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Can I ask a question of staff? I don't have a chance to. I wasn't at the meeting last night. I know when we last considered this matter, I think one of the concerns I heard by at least one commissioner was that if we were to approve it, giving the building coverage and given other decisions by the village board, that they would just reject this out of hand. That given that it goes over the, when it goes to an R8, it would exceed the building coverage percentage. But it would be under the current building coverage percentage for a C1. Did the board, either at the early 2018, did any board members at the early 2018 meeting or last night say that just per se this would not be allowed given building coverage issues?
I did not hear any comments last night that would lead me to believe that they would dismiss the application just immediately upon the issue of it being over building coverage.
Okay, so it wasn't, that wasn't like a dispositive issue as far as you know?
Correct, not like it was with Mason Point, where there was a very hard line in the sand drawn for the single-family lots to meet building coverage requirements. There was no conversation that was similar to that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other follow-up questions for staff or the applicant?
And let me start with saying, I didn't mean to be confrontational before. I know that you guys have done a lot of hard work, and I really appreciate Phil, Vince, your entire team. I know you guys have done a lot of work to work within the village, and I really greatly appreciate this. I personally love the look of the project, and I've said that many, many times. And I'm just trying to understand any potential options to address, obviously, all the concerns. And one other item that I wanted to and I don't know if we even brought this up at the last meeting, I don't think I've ever heard this option or not, if it was discussed. I know building height was discussed, but was there any discussion about potentially building the building a little higher and shrinking it inward in order to address the concerns of the setback?
Yeah, that was brought up last evening too, a little bit. You get higher than this current level, you enter a new building code, which has more onerous standards, which increase the cost substantially for building this building. So we talked about our fixed costs earlier. They go up even more. So the architect and engineer can address that specifically, but the code changes as you get to a certain level.
And just so you know, as a rule, we usually went by nothing higher than the AT&T building. So, Grange, you know, we can't do that.
In this area, right? Because obviously we're going higher with uptown and
Any other questions from the commissioners?
One photo that was in our packet, that I don't know has been focused here is kind of like the existing, sort of where the existing setback lines are. And so we'd be understanding sort of where we're at now, and then, yeah, that one. So if you could kind of just diagram, and including, the current, like the Bucknell building, sort of where that is, and, whether you're continuing along or where it sort of falls in there.
Okay, so the current. All right, so this is an existing aerial shot of the area. So this is the Jackson Storage Building, kind of outlining here. It goes right up to the sidewalk in Burlington. It's right up to the side of the Becknell Building. This is the Becknell Building. So on two sides, it kind of wraps the corner of Becknell. So the proposed building would do the same. You keep we're actually going to be 6 inches off for construction of the Becknell to the south and to the west. Our annex is only this little portion here along Burlington, and then we cut back to a courtyard. We kept the building back from Burlington for site concerns around the corner, and it's also where we propose to improve the sidewalk here at 6th and Burlington. So the edge of our building is approximately right here. So if we try and push that further north, it just makes the sight lines worse for the residents in the area. The current setback on the storage building is 0 right now in between 11 South 6th and this residence to the east. We would be pushing that wall back 6.5 feet, as well as over here, we'd be approximately 15 feet back. And then we're approximately 20 feet back from the residence of the back corner over here.
When you say the setback, could you clarify if that's from garage level or kind of first floor level?
Also, for first floor level, it's our little knee wall, which is 18 inches out of the ground, is 6.5 feet from the property line. So 6.5 plus 5, so 11.5 feet from the 11 South 6th. And then there's about 3 to 4 foot garden planter area, and then the building goes up from there.
And then the 6th Avenue, or the 11 South 6th condos are how far off the property?
So their current building is 5 feet off the property line, and if this was as of right C1, I know it's 3 stories, 45 feet. Someone could come in and maintain the 0 setback with a 45 foot tall wall, 5 feet from the building.
follow-up questions?
Let's go back to this garage thing again. I am just looking at this garage and I'm thinking that your underground garage is really the encumbrance to your success. And that I don't see why it doesn't match the upper part of the building. That would make it a lot less expensive. And I don't understand why it can't set back from the street and line up with the building next door. You know, all of those things. And as far as the count of parking spaces, personally, I'm willing to give up some parking spaces. It doesn't bother me. I think it's great that you've got 83, but you don't need 83.
So in order for me to stack the building, I would lose this back row of parking from approximately here to here. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, approximately 17 spaces I would have to remove to stack vertically from below to above.
You mean the tandem space?
These tandem spaces would all have to be removed. And in order to give them that extra 6.5 feet of green space, I did remove all the storage along this edge here. And what we're dealing with, because we're kind of sandwiched between the north and south, and to the north we're using all this permeable pavers.
Yeah, I'm
for those
not
storage.
asking you to shift the building. I'm
So
just saying.
it would be losing
line
the
it all
parking,
up.
and I don't know if that market-wise for the residents is, then they don't have enough parking.
Okay, so for marketing, you're gonna spend hundreds of thousands of extra dollars to make this parking garage a Taj Mahal. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not making a Taj Mahal, it's necessary parking to the
It's
residents.
extra amenities for the residents. And an encumbrance perhaps on your neighbors or.
Well, it's all underground, so there's no impact on the neighboring properties, and during construction, I just want them to know that there will be there's no impact allowed on their site. The site will be engineered and the walls will be shored up and everything, so there's no visible impact.
Any other follow-up questions from the commissioners? All right, having heard none, does the applicant have any final testimony they'd like to present? If not, we'll move on. Okay. So, any further questions or comments from the commissioners? Just as I heard none, so we move on. Can I have a motion by the commissioners to close the hearing? It doesn't mean everything's over, just the hearing. Public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Commissioners' discussion. I'd like to start this off with explaining to you, as best I can, what we do with a plan development. Plan development gives us the options of giving the applicant relief from many of the things we've discussed in this meeting. And in certain cases, we've given other projects greater relief than we're asking for. In some projects, we've given lesser relief. So it's something you have to keep in mind. And that's what a plan development is for. Mostly giving relief so we can get the project done. If we don't give relief, or if we hadn't given relief in some of the other projects, it would have never got done. The other thing is, this project exactly meets the comprehensive plan as we saw it for the Burlington corridor. You have to keep that in mind too. And instead of getting bogged down on little things here and there, you have to look at the whole project, okay? Yes, if it's passed, it's gonna impact some of the neighbors, and I feel really bad about that. But the other thing is you have to think of the greater good of the village also. And what this is gonna do for the village as a visual entry point. That being said, other discussions, how do you feel about this project? What do you think going forward? Go ahead.
Let me take a whack at it.
Could you speak closer to the microphone? I can't
hear you. Get that over there. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The concept of the use of the property I like. The objectives, the use, the design, in general, I like it. The comparison that I have the, if you will, the benefit and the curse of not having been involved in a number of the cited properties that have been talked about earlier. But as I see it, we work within the existing framework of the code and then deal with any changes that we wish to recommend as part of the plan development. Principally is setbacks, floor area ratios, MLA, height, on and on. This project is principally mired in this question of the lot area per unit and the building coverage. We keep, it's push and pull, tug here, tug there. And if we go down and look at those being the numbers that are causing us some angst, that and the bulk of the project and the aesthetics, and a number of other issues with those numbers. I have wrestled over time here and the pendency of this whole proceeding about saying, is there a way to address the issue of the proposed text amendment as opposed to being with such specificity as to 740 or some other number, is whether or not, and this may be left for consideration by others, is there a way to grant some consideration for underground parking as a coverage adjustment or a lot area adjustment, which would then avoid the issue of whether the number is absolute or not? Because if we recognize that parking in many instances is, shall we say, a very popular topic for any development as well as traffic, we may want to consider that to be a possibility. I confess I have not come up with a formula for that yet.
As far as the text amendment, this reminds me of something we've done in the past where we had a text amendment or it was changed like this was changed. And something that was coming up before the commission that we didn't want to have happen. So what we did is we changed the text amendment before it came before the commission. It was a bad thing. So going forward, I wouldn't get that hung up on something.
No, I would defer to clearer minds and more experience in the issue. But then if I go to call it the more subjective concerns other than the objective numbers, we all probably recall the concerns that people expressed over some years ago about the growing size of single-family residences in the village and the bulk ratio for single family became something which was discussed and implemented. And I'm just, the attempt at dealing with this in a multifamily context is also something that perhaps has to be addressed. But these are the things I've been wrestling with for the last few months. And to that extent, they still remain with me. So I throw that out there for any wiser minds to enlighten me as to how we might approach that.
Just to kind of dovetail off that, I am very sympathetic to the Sixth Avenue condo residents, the proximity of the development. I mean, my own house had a new construction house less than the next house is less than 10 feet away from mine. So I had similar concerns. It's just, but at some point, it's a consequence of living in an area that's in somewhat urban area that's located on the BNSF corridor. And I think the comprehensive plan for the BNSF corridor kind of reflects some of that. And I think it makes sense to, consider, to the extent we make an amendment, that it would be limited to R8 within the, BNSF corridor. And I don't even know if you can go to the extent of saying, in an R8 area that was previously located in a C1 zoned area. Because that really gets to the type of building that was already contemplated at this parcel, one that could go right up to the property line all the way around. And I don't know if anybody's been to downtown Western Springs. There is in fact a building being built exactly like that. Mm-hmm. The multi-family right to the sidewalk on all corners, and it's something that's being done. And in this case, we actually have a developer that's taken some pains to actually put in, courtyard, improve sight lines, address underground parking, do all these things that I think since the first meeting, probably almost a year ago, were identified as important issues to consider. And I feel like they've gone to a pretty significant extent to address a lot of those issues. And so if we could, narrow the text amendment, the code amendment to reflect that, this unique parcel, then, I think that limits any ability to claim precedent on, quasi-similar properties so long as they fit this sort of unique circumstance. My initial thought just on that.
But by definition, as granted as a specific development, that would do it as such.
Except for the text amendment, and that's the thing I think we're all struggling with is how does this text amendment get written, if it does, to limit its future impact on the rest of development in Grange. I just wanted to say that I really like the appearance of the project. I think that the improvements that they made, added architectural features at the cornices on all four sides now, I'm very impressed with, and I like it a lot. Like I said, I think they're spending a lot of money on foundations. But that's their problem, not mine. I just think that certainly a consideration of that very thought, Dave, of the BNSF corridor, and maybe even limiting it to multifamily buildings of a certain overall square footage. And I'm not sure that we can create that amendment, that we would turn it over to the village attorney and village staff to create some kind of limitation on that, if that would be acceptable. And I'd love to see a new building on this site.
So I agree with all the comments. I think R8 is appropriate for this site, and I think this building looks great, looks even better than it did the last time with the architectural elements continued all the way around the building. My hesitancy, and it has been from the beginning, was the size of this building. And I think this chart, and I don't know where it came from, it was here when I got here, that says bulk and density characteristics, comparing this to other nearby or recent developments. I know I received feedback as planning commissioner of 40 South Ashland and of Uptown that they're too big, they're too massive. So when you look at this building coverage percentage, the 40 South Ashland is at 61%, and Uptown is at 57 for the residential. This proposal, if you only take the second floor and up, I think it would be at 66%. So we're creating that same perception to the community of a massive building, bigger than what we have at the other two that I get complaints about. So, I think if there is a way to scale it back, I know, and you've put in a ton of effort, which I appreciate all of the changes that you made. I like the more of a setback on the south line, but I think that is the most important setback. It's supposed to be 20 feet. I like the planters and the separation that you have now, but I think that's something that we should consider is that, building coverage, when you look at those percentages, we're going to be creating a building that's even more massive than the ones that I hear complaints about already.
Throw my 2 cents in. Like any resident of Grange, I love walking the town. You like to walk downtown. And, if I start at Cosset and I go northbound, it's walk down the sidewalks, you're impressed. Everyone loves Grange. People who stop by, they enjoy it. So if you just keep on walking, it's not only impressive, it's dense. It's a dense building. The buildings start at the sidewalk, they go straight up. Only this beautiful building that we're in right now has any type of plaza or courtyard or anything. It's wonderful. It's great. So when you get down to Burlington, if you turn left, you're going down towards Lucas, and same thing. Building straight up to the sidewalk. Dense. Turn right down Burlington. Most of the buildings are right on the sidewalk, and then we come to this proposed structure. And I think this structure deserves to be dense. It's part of the city. It would work well with Grange. And they also offer their plaza, which is like this plaza. It's a meeting place. So, as far as the density goes, I'm all for this building, the way it's proposed right as it is. Yeah, I would build it right as it is. Lot line zone. The only thing that I would offer as a suggestion, and this is a very expensive suggestion, is to, and I mentioned this before, it blends in with in lieu of, buy that house to the south of your property. It's $500,000. You turn that into green space, you get about 6,000 or 7,000 square feet of open space. You got 50 units, it's 500,000. It's an extra 10,000 a unit. It may be enough to push your project over. Get it into the column of like, wow, okay, those numbers seem to work. I didn't work the math, but maybe that would work out. Maybe that would be viewed favorably. Maybe that's an open green space that the village would look at like, oh, we're getting a little bit more green space, your space, but it's something, they're offering something. I know it's expensive, and you spent a lot of money and time already, but it may work out.
So, I think that's a great idea. And I know we talked about that at the last meeting too. I will echo the thoughts I said earlier, which is I love the look of the building, and no matter what, I think the annex should stay, no matter what. I don't know ultimately what's going to happen, whether or not there's proposals to reduce the size or footprint or anything else, but I think losing the annex would lose a lot of the character of the building, especially coming in from the east, those that are coming in on the train. I think that's one of the special parts of this building. My biggest concern, I think, from the beginning that I've echoed is, again, the footprint on Sixth being extending further out than the neighbor to the south was my biggest concern from day one. And I would love to see if there's a way to, and I know that what I'm hearing is that that's not feasible, cost-wise, at least from, you know, the initial comments back. But if that was pushed in and the building was matched setback-wise to the condos immediately to the south, I would, at this point, be all in and say, this is a great project and I would want to move forward. I'm just expressing a hesitancy in that regard. I also, to echo another point, is I'm less concerned about the parking. There was one comment, I was here last night from one of the village trustees about whether or not tandem parking spaces should count as one or two. And to me, accommodating the count on tandem and making the garage work the way that it's configured, I think is something we should absolutely do. I think it's one thing to talk about value for the project. It's another thing to talk about requirements of the village. I don't think we need to, and I would be more willing to talk about a variance on the parking because I just don't think that as many owners, and especially, I hate to say generational, but younger generation, they don't have as many cars per family as the older generation does. So I would be much more willing to talk about less parking. And I actually, quite frankly, think that that's mostly where zoning codes are going to go in the future anyways, in terms of reduced parking counts. So I think all in all, I'm happy with the reduction between the two buildings, the moving of the balconies, shifting around to the side, the reduction of the exterior staircase. I think those are phenomenal changes. I really appreciate what that was done, including the planters in the middle. I think that was a huge improvement. I think my only hesitancy again is going to be the setback on 6th Avenue, which to me gives the appearance of the building being so, you know, voluminous. And if it was brought in a little bit, I think that would have otherwise got me over the hump there without any reservations. So.
Great. I was in the pre-application meetings with Laura on this, and we liked it from the start. Like I said earlier, this is part of the comprehensive plan. It fits right in. And if you look at the last couple of projects we did, specifically Uptown Grange and 40 South Ashley, this project fits right in. We can't get bogged down in the minutiae like the FARs and the MLAs. You have to look at the whole plan and how it will fit. And I think it fits in perfectly. We asked them to move the wall back at 6. We wanted 3.5 feet, they gave us 10 feet. I think they've gone over the board on this. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a good project. Having said that, I think it's time for us to take a vote. I'm going to trace this according to what we have in front of us, and then after I do that, if anyone wants to add it to it, let me know. So it would be, we're voting on case 247, the text amendment to reduce the minimum required lot area per unit for planned developments into multiple family districts and amendment to the zoning map, a special use for a planned development, a final plan development, and site plan approval for 50 condominium units, Grange Condominiums, DTLG Investments LLC. And then staff recommendations are, I believe on page 6 and 7. So if you want, I could read them all, or we could just say to include staff recommendations on pages 6 and 7 in the staff memorandum. All right. Okay, I'll read them up. So we can either approve or deny of the requested amendment of Article 4, Section 4-110 of the zoning code to reduce the minimum required lot area unit from 910 square feet to 740 square feet for planned development in the R8 zoning district. 2, amendment to the zoning map from C1 central commercial to R8 multiple family residential district. 3, PD. 4, special use permit. 5, and site plan approval. Under that, section 1, approval as presented for substantial conformity with the provisions of the zoning code and all other applicable federal, state, and village codes, regulations, and ordinances. 2, approval as above with modifications or conditions to be accepted by the applicant. 3, denial of the plan is presented for failure to be in substantial conformity with the provisions of the zoning code and all other applicable federal, state, and village codes, ordinances, and regulations. If the Planning Commission determines that the standards for amendments, special uses, PDs, and site plan approval have been met, and therefore recommends to the Village Board of Trustees approval of the text amendment, map amendment, concept, final plans, and site plan is submitted in Planning Commission case number 247, staff suggests the following conditions in the Plan Commission's recommendation. 1, incorporate the marketing recommendations from the Tracy Cross report to include a dedicated outreach program, a staffed on-site sales team, and maintain at least one decorated model. 2, revise the engineering plans per the village engineer's comment and consulting engineer's comments. 3, revise the landscaping plans per the village's consulting landscape architect's comments. 4, revise plans per the village's consulting traffic engineer's comments. 5, alter the exterior elevations to incorporate the suggestions from the DRC, which is A, update the building elevation to conform that a 4-inch anchored brick is being used as indicated at the January 8, 2019 Plan Commission meeting. B, the level of architectural detail and pattern of materials employed on the northwestern portion of the building should be carried throughout all elevations of the building. C, metal coping elements proposed on the northwest corner of the building be carried to other portions of the building. And D, the proposed trees along the ROWs and within the plaza be revised to shade tree species that are comparable to the mature parkway trees along 6th and 7th Avenues. And then finally, 6, revise the elements in the plaza that are currently indicated as burnished block to be changed to an alternative material. Now, does anyone have anything, any of the commissioners have anything to add to that?
I just want to be as clear as part of that. I think that was read from the February 12th recommendations, and I think a couple of those have already been accomplished, I think. And then we would also, I think, want to include the design changes, I think, that have already been suggested and presented here. I don't know if they were part of an amended application or not, or if they're just as presented tonight.
They are submittals, and
Okay.
so this is the amended application before you tonight.
Okay. So that would include, for instance, the planters instead of the wall, the recessed stairwell, the balcony being recessed along the condominium, the exterior design changes with the stacked brick, and then, so all those, I don't know how best to incorporate all that with
Just
what
say, in accordance with the approved plans,
Okay, so then I would agree with that in accordance with the approved plan, or the plans as presented, the revised plans as presented. But I would also want to, I think part of the annex, the north wing annex would be included, not excluded. I think that's I think fellow commissioner noted, I think that's a good design detail that has not really met with much objection. And then also, I think we would want the R8 designation in this case to only be within the BNSF corridor. Is that part of the?
That does not have to be part of this motion.
Okay.
You're talking about two things that are intertwined, but actually different, and we'll be working with the staff on language for the text amendment that provides for the further modification of the minimum.
Okay, so believe it or not, that's the motion.
Ask if anyone else.
I'm just at a loss here. I can't even find what read.
Yeah.
So
Really quick, he was reading from attachment 2 to the report. So you have the cover memo, the memo to the village board, and then you have these plans from the developer, and then the next attachment is the report from February 12th. And within that report, he was reading specifically from 6 and 7.
So that's everything I read into the motion.
So again, it's attachment 2, page 6 and 7 of attachment 2, which is after the developer's plans.
So anyone want to add anything else?
Because I was curiously trying to figure out where you were.
Oh.
So
Section start.
So to Commissioner Schwartz's point, I just want to make sure I understand. This is talking about, are we separating the text amendment from the site plan?
As it's read, it's part of, it's part of the motion, because it's part and parcel of the whole case.
But the language of the text amendment should be worked out with village attorney and staff to incorporate the recommendations of
The text amendment in the end will be consistent with a recommendation for approval. The Board of Trustees has the responsibility for finalizing, making the final determination as to whether it will, how it will be actually phrased, and how the code will actually be.
Well, we can make a recommendation as part of our approval that the limitations that Dave was just suggesting, which I think we all agree with.
Yes.
Should be part of this.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other additions to the motion? If not, can I have someone move for the motion? And then we can go into this discussion if you compare it.
Now, I move to approve the motion as read by the chairman, and also including Commissioner Schwartz's update.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion. We pretty much already had. Right.
My concern on it is the fact that I still don't feel it's an administrative solution. I don't think I've got a picture of where we're going with this in the future, because we don't have the text amendment language in hand, and I'm somewhat concerned about that.
Well, the text amendment portion of it will be, am I right that it will be handled at the village board level?
Yeah. The answer is I understand your concern, but I think you should think about the text amendment not as how it will be applied in other circumstances at other times, because the text amendment is not going to dictate what needs to happen or has to happen. The text amendment is to facilitate what you believe to be an appropriate project. And it will be narrowly crafted in the end so that it will not create an as-of-right opportunity for a developer who will simply create another opportunity, sort of like, not the same as, but sort of like an additional ability under a planned development to make modifications, but only in a certain set of circumstances. So I don't think that there's a threat from from the text amendment that it opens a door of any kind that the village does not want, without review, recommendations from this body, and determinations by the board of trustees. I know that that's not a fully sufficient answer, but I think that the possibility of a risk of something being greater or wider than you wish it to be has been removed.
Any other discussion?
So in other words, there won't be an exact number in the text amendment like there is now that says that in PDs you can have 910 square feet per unit. There won't be that.
It is certainly possible that that element of the zoning code would be changed, but it is not with certainty that there would still be a base amount. And then that base amount could be modified to fit a particular situation if it's appropriate to do so. We have not reached we have not sat down and reached the determination as to how to handle that, but it will be one or the other.
Any other discussion on the motion? All right, having heard none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Pace?
Aye.
Schwartz?
Aye.
Egan?
No.
Wentink?
No.
Hoffenberg?
No.
Wyrock?
No.
Kardatsky?
Aye.
Motion denied.
So what? 4 to 2.
4 to 3.
3. Well, where do we go from here?
That's the
Take it and go back and go forward.
if they want, they will have an opportunity. But there's no other business before us.
All right, motion has been denied. You want to take it back to the village board. Any old business? Any new business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
In favor? Aye.